discrete, discrete, discrete. So, let's talk about the word discrete. As a teacher, I'd like to clarify that it's an adjective, which means it modifies nouns or pronouns to describe their qualities. In common usage, discrete generally refers to something that is separate and distinct from others, such as individual objects, events, or ideas. For example, you might say, each student received a discrete set of instructions to mean that they got specific tasks to work on separately. It's essential to note that discrete can sometimes be confused with the word distinct. But while both words emphasize separation and difference, discrete typically implies a more physical or tangible distinction, like separate pieces of something, whereas distinct is often used for non-material differences, such as ideas or characteristics. That's an important nuance to keep in mind when using these words. So, let's say you're a materials scientist looking to describe the unique particles in a new type of polymer. You might use a sentence like, the polymer consists of discrete units of carbon and hydrogen atoms, which provide its distinctive properties. In this formal usage example, we're using discrete to mean something that is distinct or separate from others, highlighting the individual components of the material. Now, imagine your friend is trying to explain the rules of a board game to you, but they keep getting interrupted. You might joke with them saying, I get it, so each player takes turns. It's not like we're doing some weird discrete minigame where I only get one roll per round. Here, we're using discrete in a more casual conversation setting to describe something that is separate or distinct from others, but also maybe slightly humorous or ironic. In an academic context, let's say you're trying to explain the differences between various statistical models. You might use a sentence like, the discrete nature of the data suggests we should use a Poisson regression model rather than a Gaussian mixture model, which is better suited for continuous variables. In this example, we're using discrete to mean something that can take on distinct or separate values, which informs our choice of statistical model. So you're trying to understand this concept of discrete things? It's actually quite simple. Imagine you have different blocks, each one separate and distinct from the others. That's basically what discrete means, when something exists in individual, separate units or pieces that are countable and distinguishable from one another. For example, if you're counting apples, each apple is a distinct item, not overlapping with any other apple. It's like having separate boxes where each box can hold only one thing. Nothing more, nothing less. This idea of separation and individuality helps us understand how things interact or are arranged in the world around us. Draft, draft, draft. As we explore the word draft, let's start with the part of speech. It can be both a noun and a verb. As a noun, draft refers to a preliminary version of something, like a document or a plan, that is still being worked on. For example, I'm working on the draft of my thesis. When used as a verb, to draft means to create or produce a preliminary version of something, like writing a first draft of a story. In common usage, people use draft in everyday conversations, often referring to a rough outline or a pre-finalized version of an idea or plan. For instance, can you give me a draft of the presentation for tomorrow? You might also hear draft in sports contexts, where it refers to a younger player being selected by a team in a professional league. Think American football. Just remember, when using draft, be mindful that it implies something is still unfinished or preliminary. So, If you're sharing your final version of something, you might want to use the phrase final draft instead. Here are 3 practical example sentences using the word draft. In a formal setting, you might say, I would like to present my draft of the new university policy for review by the committee. This sentence is suitable for an academic or business conference where you're presenting your research or proposal. The context here is that you've completed a first version of a document or project and are now seeking feedback. In a casual conversation, you might say, I just finished writing my draft of the novel, but I'm not sure if it's any good. This sentence is suitable for a chat with friends or family over coffee. The context here is that you're sharing your creative process and asking for opinions from people who know you well. In a business or academic setting, you might say, the marketing team has provided a draft of the new advertising campaign for feedback before it's finalized. This sentence is suitable for an email or report where you need to communicate details about a project. The context here is that you've completed a preliminary version of a document or plan and are now seeking input from others before it's finalized. So you want to know about that early version of a written text? Well, let me explain. A draft is an initial copy of something like an email, a letter, or even a story that someone writes down before they finalize it. The main characteristics of a draft are that it's not yet perfect, and the writer has probably left in mistakes or parts that might be changed later on. It's like a sketch or a plan for what you want to say, but it's not polished yet. Similar concepts or synonyms would be something like an outline, a rough copy, or even just notes, all of which refer to the same idea of getting your ideas down before they're refined. As for how it's used, a draft is usually created when someone wants to start working on a text, but isn't sure exactly what they want to say yet. It helps them get their thoughts organized and can be shared with others for feedback or suggestions. Enable. 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 So, let's break down the word enable. It's a verb, which means it's used to describe an action or a state of being. The most common usage of enable is to mean making something possible or capable of happening, especially by giving someone power or authority to do something. For example, the new manager was able to enable her team to meet the deadline thanks to her leadership skills. You can also use it in situations where you're helping someone achieve their goals or overcome challenges. So, if your friend is trying to start a business and you give them some valuable advice, you could say, I enabled my friend to make a successful business plan. What's special about this word is that its meaning can shift depending on the context in which it's used. Sometimes it means giving someone permission or authority. Other times it means making something possible through one's abilities. Here are 3 practical example sentences using the word enable. In formal settings such as speeches or written reports, you might say, the new software update will enable teachers to more efficiently track student progress, leading to improved academic outcomes. This sentence uses enable to convey the idea that a specific action, software update, allows for a certain capability, efficiently tracking student progress. Context explanation. This sentence is likely written in an educational or administrative report. In casual conversations with friends or colleagues, you might say, I'll enable Wi-Fi on my phone so we can stream music while we study. Here, enable means to switch something on or activate it. Context explanation. You're probably discussing plans for a social gathering or study session. In business or academic writing, such as research papers or proposals, you might say, Our new partnership will enable us to expand our market reach and increase sales by 20% within the next quarter. In this case, enable means to make something possible or feasible. Context explanation. This sentence is likely written in a business plan or marketing report to convey the potential benefits of a new collaboration. So you want to know about this important concept in language and technology? Okay, to put it simply, when we say that something helps people learn a new language, communicate more effectively, or get better at using digital tools, we're talking about making their lives easier by giving them a boost. It's like having a guide or a tool that helps you understand the basics, practice your skills, and eventually become more confident in using a foreign language or navigating complex systems. This idea is often associated with things like language learning apps, online courses, or even virtual assistants, anything that can help people overcome initial difficulties and get started on their journey to becoming proficient.